Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Your Business on Purpose podcast. I am your host, Dawnette Palmore, and today my guest and I are going to be talking about compliance and creating culture within your workforce that is productive. Things we always try to strive for in our businesses, no matter how big or how small they are. But before we get started with my conversation, let me introduce you to my guest. This is Trisha Barita. She is a 20-year licensed business and employment law attorney and leadership coach. She lives in Texas, enjoys barbecue and gumbo cook-offs and spending time with her twins Elizabeth and Olivia and her husband Peter. Trisha, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dawnette. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, so I have been practicing law for 20 years. And about 5 years ago, I also expanded and had a second company where I do leadership training and some coaching. I deal basically with the business owners or the HR heads of the company and help them, get the companies into a healthy mode as far as like compliance, as well as building culture, creating a space where the employer feels like there's still like a personality to the company, but at the same time, we're not actually like overstepping what the legal boundaries are,
Yeah.
those kind of things. So there's a lot of education. That's probably where I am. I'm a big like proponent of, if you have some idea of like what it's about to run a business or what it's like to, create culture and have employees, that's what I try to help them learn more about, because a lot of people start businesses but didn't go to like business school or anything. And so they can get far in when they start. Maybe you don't have a lot of money. And so you don't have a lot to lose. So they care less about the compliance issues.
Yeah.
But then when you start making money, you're like, oh, you know what? Am I doing that right? Like, is that? And so we have a lot of those kind of conversations and so I represent basically entrepreneurs in those spaces. And some of my entrepreneurs are small and some of them, have hundreds of employees.
Yeah, that's compliance. It's a big issue. And I think even in business school or having a business degree, it's really just an outline because the law is constantly changing.
Especially where you are.
Yes, we love to change our laws every 6 months.
They're a little resistant to that here. I mean, we could have a whole podcast alone on how Texas and California differ, because I have many California lawyer friends, and they laugh at me because, they're a little less on the compliance, but also there's a lot more cluelessness, ostrich in the sand kind of attitude down here with businesses, because they aren't harping on them so much about
Yeah.
what they have to do. So they're kind of like, well, just going to do whatever I'm going to do. And versus like the California where, someone say maybe there's a lot of regulation, a little over regulation. And so it's a scary space to be, but at least there's a lot of people talking about what the regulations are. So it's kind of, I think they're definitely like different atmospheres, but I mean, it's like that in every state of the United States has their own little thing. It's just California and Texas are pretty polar.
Yeah. Well, California likes to be different.
I think Texas likes to be different too. So
But
it'll all be, yeah.
Yeah. And both states are thriving with businesses. I mean, I know we hear, people are moving out of California with their businesses, and it's true, but there is a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. So yeah, talking about compliance. So what should we're running a business. Maybe what should come into our awareness where we should start like thinking about it or being aware of what is it that we need to be looking at?
I feel like, the first thing you always kind of want to understand is how to protect what you're creating, right?
Mm,
So that could be from like an intellectual property space or just the money you're making. Like you should have a good contract. And I think you should have a good contract that is with your customers and clients. Now, they may be the ones presenting you the contract, but you need to understand like what's in it and what you need to do to comply with it. But contracts with your vendors, contracts with actually like stuff that actually is trying to protect you. So that's like requiring people to indemnify you and, get insurance and name you as an additional insured. Maybe if depending on the type of industry you're in, could be really important. Just not having contracts in place that really have the right wording to protect you, especially on getting paid. like if you don't have good pay provisions, or hey, someone's paying you late, what happens then? You don't really, everyone thinks, oh, I'm going to sue someone. I want to sue someone. Well, then I always have like the real conversation of like, do you know how much it costs to sue someone? You know how
Yeah.
long it takes? Like, it's painful. You're not going to love it. You think it's like, let's sue them. But like in reality, I'm usually trying to talk them out of it. I would make more money if we were all filing lawsuits all the time. But I mean, I talk them out of it maybe because I'm just like, you're going to hate this process. You're probably going to hate me at the end of it just because it takes a couple years at least. And you may have to have it appealed. And if you even win, and by the time you spend, and plus if it's under a certain amount, the attorney fees will jump
Yeah.
above that and the court costs. So like, you don't really want to go there. You don't want to go, oh, they broke the contract, let's sue. You really want to be like, okay, they broke the contract and now we have late provisions that come in and now you got to pay for that. So I think the first thing is to go, do these contracts protect me? Is there other stuff I could have in there that would be good?
I love that. And that's, yeah, no, that's huge. And I mean, I've had clients, I've told them, you guys need to have an agreement in place because you're starting a business together. It doesn't matter if you guys are BFFs, if you're twin sisters, it
I
doesn't
know.
matter. You have to have a contract and agreement with everything laid out. Like if you get pissed off and you want to leave, then what?
Oh,
Right?
yeah. I mean, that's another whole thing. Like, certainly, like the contracts between you and business partners, if they're not, if you're, if you're going into business with someone, it's a marriage. Like, so I've seen things where people are like, you know what? I really like this person. They helped me get a client. I'm going to give them 10% of the business. I'm like, wait, what? Who is this
Whoa,
person?
whoa,
Yeah. People do things because they don't think, well, it's only 10% and I'm still the majority owner. But, there's a lot of rights that go along with that, a lot of duties. They have the right to look at your books, even if they're 1% owner. So like, how well do you know this person? Like, are they going to have access to money? Can they go to the bank, like, and say they're an owner? And like, so like, yeah, being able, you almost want to, I like to like look backwards on that. Like, it's no, when everybody's in love, let's make an agreement. Like you're saying,
Yeah.
like, right. Like, let's make the agreement now. Like, because then, and it's painful, kind of awkward to talk about the breakup when we're in love, but we're going to
Yeah.
do it because we're never going to break up. Right. So like, it'll be fine. And like, just come up with some sort of plan of, but if we did break up, usually the way I get that everybody past that when the partners don't want to make an agreement because they all love each other and they feel like, all this about some sort of way of if we do this agreement and it isn't written a certain way, or we talk about breaking up, it's like they feel it's offensive, especially their family members or good friends that are
Mm,
starting businesses together. I always tell them, but do you want to be in business with that person's spouse? Because that's
right.
what you're doing when you don't like create a good agreement. Like you don't
Right.
have the spouses have rights, and all of a sudden that person becomes incapacitated or passes away, and now you're in business with a 50% owner that
I'm a psychopath.
is, yeah, I don't know. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know, Donna. Maybe you might, and most of them say, they don't want to be rude about the person's spouse, but they're like, well, maybe we don't want to be in business with their spouse. So then they go, we should put something in writing and kind of go
Yeah,
there.
and unfortunately, you have to think about that stuff, and that reminds me of the way that Dave Ramsey hires people. Does like this whole. He takes a long time to hire, and one of the interviews is that he goes to dinner with their spouse. Like they all have to go to dinner together, and he's like, because one, you will learn so much about your future employee, but you'll also learn about who the spouse is and whether you want to go into business with crazy or not.
Yeah, that's funny. I love that. I don't think I've ever heard that about him, but you know what you also find out about when you're around someone and their spouse is how they treat their spouse. Because you will be in a marriage, a business marriage, and like when things kind of get difficult, you lose contracts, or you like, the money's down, or people get weird and dicey, and so you just want
Mhm.
to like make sure that you can have difficult conversations, because if you can't have difficult conversations, you probably shouldn't be going into business together, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up that's frustrating and awkward and different point of views. I mean, you're not you're going to have differentials between two people, just like in a marriage. It's going to be in a business relationship too. And I've seen a lot of business breakups literally just because they can't figure out how to talk about, usually they can't figure out how someone stays in one lane and someone stays in the other. someone's doing operations, someone handles marketing and the administrative or something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. They didn't have clearly
yeah,
defined roles in the beginning.
exactly.
Yeah. Which is also something that should be there.
Exactly.
Clearly defining our roles. So, okay, so looking at, having agreements with our vendors, right? Because making sure that we're reading contracts as well, as you stated, because, you see people get into bad contracts, or they're like, I didn't know I had to do this. And guess what? It doesn't matter because you signed it. It's not
Yeah.
their fault you didn't read it. It's just like our phone. We sign up for these apps. They're like, I didn't give them permission. I'm like, you did. It's in the terms you didn't read. And I get it because I don't read it either because nobody wants to read it, but I know the risk I'm taking. So I'm like, okay, I know they're going to have access to all this stuff. Do I want them to have it or not? Is it worth it for me?
Right.
But again, you have to have agreements for everything. I mean,
Yeah.
it seems a little excessive, but when you think about it, you're like, but it helps everybody from getting screwed.
I
Hopefully.
mean, people that are really big, successful, that grow successful businesses have good contracts. And I also think NDAs are important depending on certainly the industry you're in. Even if you may think, oh, I'm not in an industry that's like super confidential. Like, I talk to people about legal stuff. You talk to people maybe about money stuff. Like having NDAs with the vendors that you use you may need them to print a bunch of stuff related to work. So are they under an NDA? You think that doesn't naturally extend because I have a confidentiality attorney-client privilege. That doesn't naturally extend like to random other people. So
To vendors.
to vendors, exactly. So like, I mean, I put everyone under an NDA. If you're doing an independent contractor work for me, like, because I never want to be worried about, you being under the obligation. And I want to make it really clear, like you may see confidential stuff. Not super, super confidential, but just stuff that you don't want them taking or whatever, and understanding they have to destroy what's not kept or whatever for the purpose of the work that they're doing. But like, you're right, little contracts and stuff, like I've seen the worst are those, like when people get those commercial printers and they rent them for their offices and they're like a 10-year rental on the printers. And I've seen stuff like that where it's just so painful, those contracts, to get out of them. They have all these fees and penalties, and it's like you've given away your firstborn child, like to try to get out of this 10. And what happens is you think, well, it's a great deal, 10 years, that'll really they're going to give me a cheaper cost. But yeah, what if you go to business in 3 years? Or what if you don't need that printer? Like now what's your plan here? Well, they're not going to just let you out of it. Like the buyout is usually a year alone and whatever. So if you can get a buyout from them. So yeah, really understanding kind of what you're signing up for, who you're doing business with, what kind of information are you going to give them? Don't assume that they're going to, hold any information you give them in a confidential space unless you've kind of put them under notice that they need to.
Okay, so this brings something to my awareness. I do events. Should my speakers be signing NDAs?
I guess what are they being exposed to that would be confidential?
Well, I don't know if it would be confidential, but what would well, let me ask you this then, a different way. I have events, I call them drinks and dollars. I have a way that I run it and special things I do. Should there be I mean, I do have contracts with speakers. I've already like what's expected of you and what I'm going to give you in return.
Yeah.
But should there be like, don't copy me or something like that?
Oh yeah. So yeah, if you're doing it like that. So yeah. So because there's probably some sort of creative process that you have, potentially like some copyrighted information in your main contracts, you can put pieces in there that are like NDA, like you may be exposed to confidential information. Know that if you're doing that in the course scope of, attending at this event as a speaker, then you would have something in there saying if you knew the names of the things too, like the such and such process or all the things associated with the such and such event and the speaking materials and all of this are copyrighted and owned by you, and they therefore are not allowed to. I mean, there's a natural protection for the copyright, but to like put them on clear notice in the contract to where it would be a breach of contract if they did copy you would be the way to go, because it's just like hiring like someone to create blog posts for you or something. If you don't have in the contract saying I'm going to own it. You can't go create it for somebody else. Like whatever you work for me and create is mine, not
Mm.
yours and mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. See, like you have to differentiate with them about what it is. If they're going to be getting the benefit of being exposed to what it is you do or exposed to the clients or whatever it is, potential clients, then in
Oh, wow.
exchange for that, they're going to protect your stuff and not copy you. And they agree to that, not only in intellectual property law generally, but like in the contract terms is helpful.
So if you're hiring like a VA or something, you should have a contract and it should be in there. Like you can't, whatever you create for me, you can't go give to somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Wow.
If you're
I never
paying
thought
them.
about that. Yeah, that's
Yeah. I
true.
mean, well, I mean, it's like someone writes this amazing blog post. They're like, yeah, I saw that on so-and-so's blog post too. You know, you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Or some modification of it. Like, and I mean, this is the generation of like, you know, all the things as far as ChatGPT. So people are just like, it's free, it's there, I'm going to use it. You know what I mean? Like everyone sort of is confused as to the blurred lines of like, well, ChatGPT gave it to me, so it must be able to be used by anybody. Well, that's not what ChatGPT says, right? ChatGPT is like, we don't know exactly where we got this. It's from a collaboration of a ton of different things. You need to do your own research to make sure you're not copywriting or stealing or whatever.
Mm.
The intellectual property laws are still all there. And so that goes the same when you hire a VA, they do a lot of different things for you. And I would definitely put them under an NDA and say that the works that they create, if they're unique and special, and especially if they used any ideas, like you gave them a couple ideas, this is what I want you to base it off of, like, or at least get an understanding between them of what is going to be what they can do with that, right? If they can do
Yes.
anything with
Yeah,
those
that makes
materials.
sense.
Yeah,
Especially if they have like your competition as another client.
right.
Which
Exactly.
many of them have niches, right? They serve certain demographic of people or industries. So therefore, they're probably going to be servicing one of your or multiple possible competitors.
Exactly. And maybe you don't care. Maybe you're like, I don't care. I just want to provide an email to my clients every week and I need someone to help me draft that. And it's going to be about this sort of generic financial issue or something like that. You know what I mean? And um, that's just going to go out. And so it doesn't really matter to me that other people are also going to be using that
Yeah.
information in their newsletters to their clients. But if you're asking them to really create something and you're paying the price for some creation of it, you should have an understanding with them. Is that a work for hire? Is that going to be actually owned by your company and not for theirs to sort of reconfigure for somebody else?
Okay, so you said something about ChatGPT. So since that's something that's growing, how do we like what are ways we can make sure we're in compliance if we're using ChatGPT? Is there something we can search against to make sure we're not it didn't grab something from somebody else's IP?
I think so. It's developed so fast, this use of like ChatGPT and the other features, of AI that like, and I've done a bunch of speeches now on AI for business owners talking about these issues, is that the way the case law is kind of coming out is that um, if you're just taking what's there, it's quite possible that it's generated from things that are copyright protected, I would expect.
Mm,
So there isn't like clear mechanisms for, well, is this copyrighted material, Chat GPT? So like you can go, is this copyrighted material? It's probably going to go like, it maybe, it may not. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, have you ever tried to talk to like Siri or Alexa and have questions with them? They're like, I am an amazing little like discussion. You know what I mean? Like they're AI things, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you can't trust them. It's like having a conversation with a 3-year-old and being like, do you think this is trademarked? Like, it's not a good plan, right? So I think that the best, like what I talk about in those speeches, I'll say this, Dawnette, but I tell businesses, you need to come up with a you need to come up with a strategy for AI. You should not be dibbly dabbling into AI if you're doing this with your company and not have a real plan. Like most people that are trying to be safer about it are actually just trying to use it for a generative sort of idea platform. Like they
Mm.
give it ideas and thoughts and try to get some sort of collaboration going. But if you're using it to write a book, like you may be getting pieces from other people's books that have been given into ChatGPT, maybe legally, maybe not. And ChatGPT wants to make you happy. That's all it's doing. It's just like running around trying to be like,
It's a
how can
people
I make you
pleaser.
happy? Yeah, it really is like the ultimate people pleaser, and it's going to do whatever it is. And so coming up with some sort of content strategy of like, what am I going to use this for? How are we going to make sure that what we're giving it, we're not giving it a lot of, because really to make AI really good, you got to give it a lot of data. And you're not dumping in tons of confidential data or protected copyright data that you don't know where it goes once you give it to it. And figuring out, what employees are going to be using it, what is the purpose, where is the best place for us to use it to really gain strategy, but not, lower the risk. But the lawsuits out there are coming from all different kinds of places, like comedians where, their jokes were copied and reformed and it's similar jokes, or they use the voice of the comedian to create new jokes that sound like the comedian that isn't really the comedian, or they create images that are similar to other people's art, or they're, someone's book got dumped into, someone copy pasted basically a full protected book into AI, and then it was then generating reports and things about it. Like there's some very interesting like legal arguments going on, and really the whole problem is that there's not a lot of control around what AI gives you or why it gives it to you or where it's coming from. And because of that, if you use it in a way that it's like you think you're actually creating new things, you may be kind of actually using stuff that's probably potentially protected, and there isn't a really good comparable platform yet to go, is this protected, is it not?
Mm.
I mean, right now I'll tell you, the teachers in high schools and colleges are worried because they're seeing a lot of the AI generated stuff turned in by students.
I bet.
Yeah. And so then they're kind of going, wait a minute, like you didn't create this. But of course, I mean, you turn to ChatGPT and be like, I need a 12-page document on Ben Franklin. It's going to give it to you. It's a people pleaser. Is all of it true? The student probably doesn't know. Student probably doesn't care, right? Like students like, this looks good. I'm turning this in.
My teacher's not going to read all this.
I know. I'm going to go back to whatever it is I was doing. But yeah, AI is in itself a difficult thing. I think I always say that like start with having a strategy of how you're going to use it, when you're going to use it. You have to if you're having employees use it or anyone in your workforce, you can't like give them a blank check and not like put some parameters around it, or you're creating some risk and liability, I think, on the part of the company.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I was talking to somebody about it, and I go, I think it's going to make us really stupid if we rely on it, to actually fill in our creativity. But I love that I can write something up and put it in there and say, hey, can you make this speak more to this type of person or this audience? Or it will, take my podcast and write show notes from my podcast that I've already done.
I know. That's super cool.
Yes, because who wants to listen to it and take show notes?
I wonder what the show notes about this will say, because it's going to be writing about itself. But yeah.
Right. But no, that's a really good point. Something to think about. Also, something to think about is, hey, if we're putting this into AI, it's possibly going to be used later by somebody else using AI.
I mean, the purpose of AI is to get smarter and smarter and use more and more information. And the only way to do it, it's kind of like this interesting, and I mean, I'm not an AI expert, but it's like it's an interesting thing, because AI is going to get smarter and smarter with more data we give it. And people are giving it more and more data because they want to be people pleased and see these cool results. And so, I mean, it's getting all kinds of data, and where and what it's going to do with it and how it's going to create things. It's going to get better and better at answering questions and creating things. Like I ask it for parenting advice quite often, and it's super useful. You know what I mean? Like, what does it do with all that information? Like it's just generating and generating. But like so the law is like way not there.
It's ancient,
and they're trying
that.
Yeah, that's and the sort of like, I mean, the internet came about, right? And the internet didn't exist, like, and it took a minute for the law stuff to sort of catch up. And it's going to take that here. So while all that's going on, it's kind of like the Wild Wild West. There's
Yeah.
some people like the Elon Musks and the other people in the world, like, Mark Zuckerberg types probably are just like, this is the best thing ever. But then there's like this whole sort of gray space of there's going to be a lot of people's rights that are trampled on or abused and stuff. There's going to be a lot of mistakes made. There's a lawyer in Dallas that wrote a whole brief and turned it into a federal court. Didn't have his attorneys, I guess, check it or whatever. And anyway, it made huge news because all the case sightings were bogus. And
Oh my.
ChatGPT, or I think it was that wrote the whole brief, and the guy got, a fine from the federal court, and it was a big discussion among lawyers of, okay, so it's not the level of being able to like do the things lawyers do yet. So, but it doesn't mean it won't get there. It's just not there yet,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. So
Mhm.
it cited fake law. That's interesting.
Because it wants to make you
But
happy.
it's like, okay, where did it get that from? Instead of just saying, hey, I don't have any, or this is what I found.
It's not going to do that. It
There you
never
go.
comes back and says, have you ever asked ChatGPT a question and goes, yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say that. It comes up with something. And so it's
I
going
have
to
had
come
it
up with
say, make
something.
sure you know, that it may not all be accurate, to check
So
your
that
facts.
came from lawsuits. Like when the lawsuits
Okay.
started, and people were relying on it for all kinds of information, and then it came out and said, you need to verify this on your own as to whether or not this is accurate
Okay.
or not. Yeah.
Okay. So who owns ChatGPT? Because would they be held liable for giving false information?
No, because
Okay.
they put that disclaimer on there.
Okay.
Right. Um, I think they were worried about that. But like I said, it's kind of Wild Wild West right now with all of that. I think the terms and conditions of using those are going to be like, you do this at your own risk. Enjoy,
Mm,
like
mm.
have
Yeah.
fun. We don't
Yeah.
know what you're gonna get. Like, and you know, it's exciting. It's super cool. I think businesses should use it. I think they will fall behind in their industries if they don't. I just think they need to like proceed with caution about and have a good strategy of like, we're okay with going here right now, but we're not going to go there. Like, we're
Yeah.
not going to write a book for our clients with GPT being the entire writer, basically.
Yeah.
You
So
got
what
to
if
be
you wrote a
careful.
book and then put it into ChatGPT? Obviously, you're going to run the risk of it using it for someone else,
Right.
but that becomes your property, right? If you put it in there.
Okay, so that's a really good question. So
Okay.
if you created something, that's the thing that, and most experts, not even legal expert, most experts will tell you, be careful when you give it copyrighted stuff because it can do whatever it wants with it. You have really sort of like, you can't
Mm,
control where that goes or what happens with it to some extent, the way it's built right now, from my understanding. And so if you give it a book and that book hasn't been published and someone takes that information somehow and publishes it before you, you would have problems in the copyright world. Technically, I mean, if I sit here and write a poem this afternoon and it's only unique to me, it's a copyrighted poem, even if I didn't like publish it or file it with the copyright office in
mhm.
the United States. But like, that's a big fight. You really would much rather be like, it's published, I own it, I created it, and then maybe give it to ChatGPT. So you got to be careful, like, I think, about giving it information that you yourself plan to make money off of and copyright.
Mm,
I'm not saying don't do
right.
it. I was just saying
Yeah.
there's a risk there, right? That it goes somewhere else, someone else gets it, and then
Yeah.
what happens? And then they say
Right.
it was their idea, not your idea. And that's the
Yeah.
argument of copyright.
Wow. Wow, we could talk a lot about this stuff. I'm glad that we had this conversation and geared into AI, because it's just so big right now, and I'm sure in your world it's being talked about a lot. But I think we do need to have more discussions about it, to protect ourselves and our businesses and our livelihood, and even our own intellectual property. Um, so if someone says, "Okay, I need to find out if I'm in compliance, or what the rules are," how do they find you?
You can go to my website, baritalaw.com, BARITALAW.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Trisha Barita.
Love it. And those will all be in the show notes for you guys to grab. Go visit her, follow her. Um, and if you need some good advice, give her a call because everything we talked about was really good.
You're
And it
so
opened my
sweet. Thanks,
eyes.
Donna.
It opened my eyes to a lot of things, which I think we get in trouble a lot of times because we just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like there's just so much to know. Like lawyers don't know everything, but they often have been trained to go figure out how to find things that they don't
Yeah.
know. And that's basically one of the big differences is that, it's almost like a can of worms when you start getting into like what could you do? There's so many things you could do to protect your business, so many things to create a good culture or protect yourself against AI or whatever, but all you can try to do is just do the best that you can and not ostrich in the sand of like, I don't know, so I'm not going to worry about it kind of thing,
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We can go on and on about this conversation. It is so good. Thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate your presence and tuning in and continuing to listen and like and review and all the things you do. We wouldn't keep doing this without you. So thank you so much. And remember, start that over. Remember, conducting business on purpose not only fuels your success, but also propels you towards a purposeful life. And until next time, embrace your journey of intentional business and purposeful living.